Now, a police officer who was thrown from his motorcycle responding to the Just Stop Oil protests on the M25 has thanked the public for their support. The officer is still recovering from the injuries he sustained in a crash after being called to respond to Just Stop Oil activists climbing gantries on the 160-mile London orbital to force road closures. Meanwhile, the group has announced that it is halting the actions on the M25 after anger from opponents who said it was only a matter of time before someone was killed because of their stunts. Do we need harsher punishments for eco-terrorists just like Just Stop Oil? That is the next question. And with me to answer that is Matthew Stadlen, broadcaster and political commentator, and Peter Whittle, director of the New Culture Forum. Peter, yes. What are we going to do about these nutters?
Well, I think that the police should just do their job. You've got to sort of see this in the broader context, I think. And the public frustration about it is getting enormous. And, of course, what's going to happen is people are going to take it into their own hands more and more. Yeah. I think that...
Sorry, what do you mean by that?
Well, I think that we've already seen it, whether it's people, dragging people from the road or to stop various different obstructions on the motorway.
You're not encouraging violence, of course.
No, I just said, I think people, we're seeing it, people start to do that. I think the police should do their job. That's the first thing I said, Matthew. The problem is that I think increasingly we have a police force which appears to take different attitudes to different causes. And again, going back actually to Remembrance Sunday, in fact, or Remembrance the 11th, when it was on the 11th, a couple of years ago, Extinction Rebellion, as it then was, managed to get right up to the cenotaph, and it managed to stand there on the actual 11th of November for a good 10 to 15 minutes. God knows what they could have done in that time. And there were huge protests about this at the time, because, wait a minute, how come that could happen? How come the police could allow that to happen? And yet, similarly with BLM, it was treated very, very gently. When it comes to other demonstrations, for example, if you were anti-lockdown, for example, and you went to one of those demonstrations, then pretty much you were kept in order. And I think that there is a kind of selective policing going on now. That is what we've got to look at, because, people are looking at this and they're comparing to other countries, say in Europe or whatever, and they're thinking, wait a minute, you're giving them water, you're whatever it is, you're being all nice. At the same time, where people are trying to get to work, they're trying to go about their business. And I think, for me, it is this kind of sort of entitled right that the people seem to have, that somehow or other their motives are so sort of high that somehow anything is allowed, anything is legitimate, and, to hell with everybody else. Yeah.
Matthew, we've already seen a police officer get injured. Do you think things are going to escalate further? Do you think if the police don't step in and actually enforce the law and stop these eco-warriors in what they're doing, average Joe is going to do it for them?
Yeah, first thing, thoughts with the police officer. It's appalling what happened to him. Secondly, I think in the last few days, Just Stop Oil have said that they're going to actually stop for the moment what they've been up to on the M25. Thirdly, I think there's a really interesting question here as to whether these Just Stop Oil protesters will end up being seen like the suffragettes or not. And you guys might balk at that, but there is a climate crisis, there's a climate catastrophe. It could lead to the most...
You believe there is a climate crisis?
No, the science says there's a climate crisis. But could we just park, because we want to talk about Just Stop Oil for a moment, we can debate that endlessly. The science says there is. I think there is a real issue here as to the effect, the impact that these people are having against the risks that they are causing. Would I personally go out and disrupt the M25 and break the law? No. Why? Two reasons. I'd be squeamish about the idea of consequences, such as we've seen with that police officer. Two, because I believe in the rule of law. However, the suffragettes, 100 years ago, broke the law, and we now treat them as the heroines that they deserve to be. There is a difference, because the suffragettes didn't have the vote, and these guys. So that's it. Well, no, it's important, but it's also disingenuous to suggest that we would not be talking about the issues being raised by Just Stop Oil on this show and other shows if they were not doing what they're doing. So, do I think they should break the law? No. Do I think the fact that we're talking about it reflects the fact that they have broken the law? Absolutely, yes. And I think that's true of GB News, but also my former station, LBC. There's a sense that presenters on these stations, and I was one, love to hate people like Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil, because it drives traffic, it drives audiences, it drives clicks.
That's very
so tell me why you want to discuss Just Stop Oil if you think the best thing to do would be to starve them of the oxygen of publicity.
I didn't say to start them with publicity.
Why not, though? Why would you not do that? Because that might bring an end to what they're doing.
I think the action is to lock them up, and I don't actually think what they're doing is good, because I don't believe in a climate crisis to begin with. But even if it was...
You don't believe in science, I know that.
No, yes. I believe in science, but when you say the science, as in there is a consensus on this, there is lots and lots of debate going on this, and you are not a scientist, so don't give me...
You can always find a scientist who disagrees with the consensus. By the way, I agree on one thing with Peter, and that is that police should absolutely do their job, and there should not be selective policing, because otherwise the rule of law breaks down.
But I mean, these people are making demands, and they're not engaging in the democratic process because they have that moral superiority, because they believe what they're doing is for a good cause. However, people disagree, and I don't think the general public is on their side. So are these demands worthwhile? Is it going to come to a good means?
No, it's not. And also, I don't really go along with this argument, at least we're talking about it. I mean, you can justify almost any act on the basis of at least we would get to talk about it. I think what strikes me about these people, actually, Karen, it's the level of, as I said, moral superiority coupled with almost a form of demented hysteria. I mean, also, you can't, when you look at it, quite often they're highly privileged people, right? And the people who suffer generally are working class people, going on their way to work, trying to go on their way to work. The police could stop it if they really wanted to. There's not the will to.
Are you not a little bit impressed that people who have a lot to lose are giving up their freedom, risking years in prison potentially?
What do they have to lose?
Their freedom.
No. They
care so much about something, they're prepared to go to jail. That impresses me.
Matthew, they will be... No, it doesn't impress me at all.
Why not?
No, because they have a sense of an over...
Do jihadis?
No, they don't.
Okay.
No, they have comparison.
They have an exaggerated sense.
These people did not go out to injure a police officer.
They're willing to break the law to do it.
And this is non-violent protest. One of the reasons we're talking about it, and rightly I think that we're talking about it, is because a police officer was injured in attempting to stop these people from breaking the law.
So you do think it's right to talk about this?
No,
after all that hot air about saying this is
No, I'm just surprised that you think it's right to talk about it, because I would have thought in your position you would want to starve them of the oxygen of publicity.
Listen, someone, or, let's, God forbid it happens, but someone's probably going to get very, very badly hurt soon.
And I wouldn't do it. I wouldn't do what they're doing.
The thing is,
but do I have some sympathy for them?
The problem with your position is that you have... Well, yes, but the thing is it's great. So you say, on the one hand this, on the other hand that, and we're left with the situation exactly as it stands now. And the fact is that this is going on, that there is not the will to stop it. The police could stop it under all sorts of different laws, not even ones to do with...
Well, they are stopping it.
No, to do
Hundreds
with
of them have been
protesting.
arrested.
It could be public, it could be obstruction. It could be obstruction of the King's Highway. It could be public nuisance, all of these things.
To you both. A real quick answer, if you can, please. What should they be doing instead?
These protesters? Yeah. Well, as I say, what I'm doing here is reflecting the facts. In my view, I mean, you could say this is more of an opinion than a fact, but I suspect the reality is the reason we're talking about it is because they're taking extreme measures. So, in other words, if they signed petitions, if they demonstrated outside Parliament, if they did all the sorts of things that I would do, because I'm a law-abiding citizen, there's absolutely no way we would be talking about them.
So it sounds like you're endorsing...
Well, no, I would say what they should do, the protesters, they should just do the democratic thing. They should stand for election under the name of Just Stop Oil or whatever it is. Stand for election, do it the way everyone else has to do it. You don't have some God-given right just because you think you are so right.
I think that's an interesting point, because the leader of Just Stop Oil, Roger Hallam, does have a political party called Burning Pink. So he could stand for election if he wanted to do it democratically.
Yes, the thought is terrible.
You could stand against him.
Thank you, we could indeed. I probably would. Matthew Stadlen, broadcaster and political commentator, and Peter Whittle, director of the New Culture Forum. Thank you both very much for that very heated debate.